Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, HR Perspectives of Hiring and Integrating Veteran Talent. I am Neha, the Talent Acquisition Specialist at EKAM, and your host for today's session. The purpose of this webinar is to understand the HR professional, discover how to unlock the unique potentials of the veteran talent. We'll talk about the common challenges and highlight the great values the veterans bring to the corporate world. I'm excited to have you all here and looking forward to a productive and inspiring discussion. I'm very much thrilled to introduce our esteemed speakers today. Please welcome Ms. Kavita Kurup, the Global Head of HR and Corporate Communications at UST. She leads efforts to create strong talent strategies and build an inclusive culture of 35,000 plus employees worldwide. She has played a key role in making her organization more flexible and focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, including veteran hiring. Next, I am honored to introduce Rashmi, the CEO of EKAM. Rashmi has deep understanding of the challenges that the veterans face that fuels her dedication to company's mission. Let's hear more about the vision and the mission that EKAM has from her. But I would like to thank you, each one of you, as you have joined this session. I would want to tell you that this is going to be a 20-minute session followed by a question answer session. And if you have any questions, you have a chat box at the bottom. You can, leave your questions in the chat box, and if time allows, we'll be also able to take the questions by audio. So from here, I would like to hand the mic over to Rashmi to take this ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much. And welcome everyone to our second webinar. And we are super thrilled to have Kavita here with us today. So Kavita, let's get straight into it. Okay. I know you come from a military background. So maybe, in the middle of the journey, if you would anytime you want to share a bit about how that kind of impacts, influences how you especially deal with and talk about this cohort, we would love to hear that as well. I think first and foremost thing, what do you believe are some of the key challenges that we as Asia fraternity or corporates at large face when it comes to hiring and integrating veteran talent? What is it that you've observed, and maybe if you can shed some light on that.
Sure, Rashmi. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation. As you said, yes. My grandfather's on the Air Force, so I've spent my childhood on the Air Force base. And summers were spent counting how many sorties went out and how many sorties came back in. And I wouldn't have given that up for anything else, any other experience in the world. So there is a lot of sentimental connection to bringing the veterans back to place. But I think generally, if you speak with corporates, they are more than happy to bring in the veteran population into the regularized civilian workforce because of the number of benefits that it brings in, right? They're disciplined, they're very focused, they are able to take direction, understand what needs to be done, they're able to integrate large groups of people. So there is a lot of positives that are there. The challenges really come in, and I think they are fourfold. The first one, of course, is the translation of skills. Now, the skills that you would learn as a veteran or when you're in the armed forces is very different from what we civilians would use in a corporate space. And translating one set of skills to another is where corporates and civilians would find, and the veterans would find the maximum challenge. Because if you're able to create a kind of map that allows you to match the skills out, it becomes easy. But here you really have somebody who, for example, last year we spoke to someone and we brought him on board who he used to map the ocean floor for our submarines. How do you map that skill to something in the corporate?
Absolutely, yes.
But we found that, he created learning interventions for people teaching that, and he's doing an amazing role for us in our learning department. So you have to really spend time to translate the skills, and it might not be an apples to apples mapping, but you have to really figure out what kind of apple it is and what it goes well with, and then try and make that mapping. So that's the first challenge that really I see. The second one is a transition, the culture transition that you see, right? Life is very regulated and structured in the armed forces. You're told to do a certain thing and you do it because you're told to do a certain thing.
Yes.
It's a complete shift of paradigm. It's diametrically opposite in the corporate space. If someone tells you to do something, more often than not, you will not do it just because you've been told to do it. And that is something that they find very difficult to adjust to. Saying, I led hundreds and thousands of people in the armed forces, and now I have the small team of three who don't listen to me.
Don't
And
even
I'm
listen to
telling them
me.
to do it, and they are
Absolutely. And,
not.
and and the best part is this team that comprises of would be from, different generations,
Absolutely,
right? So there are
absolutely,
millennials and there are
absolutely,
Gen Zs, and then,
absolutely.
how do you deal with
Yeah.
them? Because one size doesn't fit all.
No.
And it's really interesting how that whole, so cultural fitment, as you
Yes.
rightly pointed out, is
So,
something
skill
really
translations, cultural transitions. And third is this entire set of misconceptions and biases that come with them, right? Oh, they come from the armed forces, so they will do only certain things. Oh, they come from here. So, the bias of age, the bias of will they be able to listen to me because I'm a junior person, and you want to respect them. And, the gratitude is there because you know what they've done and they've come, but in the role you are, it's almost a role reversal where you have to tell them to do something, but so there are these misconceptions and biases, but that is more on the behavioral side that can be very easily managed. But I think very, very tangible tools, one is the skill translation, and second is the cultural transitions, that both the the civilians have to do with the veterans, and the veterans have to do with the civilians.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you bring in a very important point, Kavita. So while we were looking at setting up the design for ACOM and what areas to target, we interviewed a whole bunch of veterans and tried to understand what is the biggest challenge that you face. And this does kind of come across as something that people aren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know. So it's like, what, I'm a generalist or I'm a technical, but I'm not sure which areas would I fit into a corporate setup. So translation of skill, very, very important and pertinent. And while we do our bit to educate the section in terms of how we can go about it, I think there's also what we have observed, a lack of understanding for many corporates and business teams as well, because they don't understand and appreciate what kind of skill sets military veterans bring in.
Yeah.
If it's a technical, it's still, I think, fairly easy for
Yes.
them to differentiate between Army, Navy, Air Force, for
Yes.
example, the tri-services, and then really say if someone coming from aviation, at least that sector is sorted, in
Yeah.
their mind. But how do you go about um, figuring out, and if you have kind of deployed some strategies, Kavita, for you and your teams to see, if you are getting a veteran, this is how you're going to go about evaluating them, because that will enable us to not have biases when we are evaluating them. It's not apple to apple comparison in terms of looking at a civilian candidate for that matter. So how do we go about evaluating them in all authenticity that we can bring it to the process? Would you have something on that one for us?
Oh, absolutely, Rashmi. It's important that the interaction is not restricted to just the interview. There have to be multiple, it has to be multi-layered, right? So you have to have multiple conversations with the same set of people to really give them the comfort that you're not here to judge them, but you're here to try and help them figure out what their next career move is going to be. And as I said before, most corporates are very, very happy to provide those opportunities. It's just a question of finding the right fit. So going in with an open mind, making sure that you spend that time and effort to try and understand what those skills are. So actually trying to do something like a skill mapping workshop, right? We can
Yeah.
sit down and tell them that these are some of the skills, that what are those. Yes, you do certain activities, you've been doing it in a very in a very confidential manner, but these can be translated to doing something in a much more open manner in the corporate space. And how do you really make those mappings? Second is, I think it's important that with past experience comes future benefits. So getting veterans who have really managed to crack it in the corporate space, getting them to come in and talk about what their journey has been and how has it really made a difference, allows the veterans to get a sense of how they can pivot on some of the skills that they have. And it need not be a direct mapping of saying, okay, here is what got me here, and if I continue doing this, this is what I will do in the corporate space. It might be something that's very, very different. somewhere the veterans also need to, keep their minds open about what the corporates bring to the table and say that, yes, these are some of the roles that are available within the corporate space. So maybe it might not be in line with what I've been doing all these years in the armed forces. Maybe it's time for me to try out something new and take a little risk because I'll be able to match up and the corporate will be more than happy to support that kind of a journey. So, skill mapping workshops, mentoring on both sides, targeted recruitment where you are saying, when it's for a particular a certain industry or a certain sector and you bring people in, then it makes it a lot more easier for everybody to have a more open conversation and arrive at roles that would be a win-win, where it might not be 100% fit, but even if it's a 40-50% fit, then both are willing to take that risk of investing their time, energy,
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things, Kavita, I think when we talk about hiring veterans as a strategy for any organization, it has to be really deeply rooted to the fact that the leadership, the not just I'm not just talking about the HR side of it, but the entire leadership kind of aligns that yes, we do want to bring in this talent because it is ultimately giving us a very different perspective to things. So a way maybe a lot of us at the civilian side aren't equipped to think or look at things, right? So I think, have you kind of seen a struggle or I would say how do we go about at an organization side to bring in that endorsement? Maybe when your organization is there a way to figure out, are we ready for this talent? How do we go about building that endorsement within our system so that it's
I think we
easier
are.
for us to go
Yeah,
about
Rashmi, I
hiring?
think we're always ready to bring in that talent. There isn't a question of needing to set up, an endorsement for bringing in veteran talent. I think you will never find an organization that says, I don't think we have a space for veterans in our organization and somebody else can do it better. Yes, there may be certain organizations that have got it figured out, saying these are the roles where the veterans do really well, and these are where they do not really do as much. There may be other organizations who say these are the patterns that we will follow, and if the veterans are able to stick to the pattern, they'll be successful. But there will never be an organization that will say, as policy, we will not hire veterans because everybody wants to
Yeah,
showcase what they can do back for the armed forces as much as they have done for us, right? So that
yeah,
inherent sentiment is always going to be there with the corporate space. What works, of course, is yes, endorsements from senior leaders. What also helps is that if one of the veterans cracks it and enters into the corporate space, what are they really doing to bring in more veterans
yes,
into the team, right? In whether it's in their own function. So it's onus and responsibility lies a lot upon the people who make it, on making the or corporates realize that there is value in bringing more of the veterans into the fold of the organization. So what is it that they can do better? How are they aligning to the culture of the organization? How are they really working alongside and showcasing collaboration, innovation, teamwork? How are they really making sure that 20-30% of the teams that they will lead are all veterans themselves? And that then sets the ball rolling. And if everybody starts doing that, then automatically the number of hires will go up
yeah.
exponentially.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the reason maybe a lot of organizations invest in a buddy program or a mentorship program where a veteran who's been part of the system kind
Yeah.
of mentors the new folks who come in. So I think that's also been something very successful in many organizations, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. In fact, Rashmi, something that at some point we should take up is the courses that they do at all of the
yes.
IIMs before joining in. There should be an internship that's built in, right? That gives them a flavor of what it means to go to the workplace. What does it mean to move into this complete shift instead of throwing them into the deep end after the course after 6-9 months and saying now, start being productive from day one, and you're expected to do a 360 in the kind of behavior that you exhibit, the kind of behavior you get done to you, the cultures that you see, because it is a huge change that they are going through. So building an internship into some of those programs would be
Yes.
very, very beneficial for them.
Yes, I agree. I can't agree more to that. And it gets only real when you are on the ground,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I think that gets really real for a lot of people to see how they can pan out and also help them figure out the kind of roles that what they wouldn't want to ultimately get into, right? All right. I think we have time for maybe one more quick question before we get into Q&A, Kavita. So, all right, so we get to what about integration? That's a very critical piece for us to also solve for. You spoke a bit about it, during the conversation, but any tips, anything very concrete that you'd like to maybe call out as part of our integration strategy when we get new veteran leaders or, folks in our companies?
So you have to have sensitization conversations. I'm not saying workshops, but at least conversations with the immediate, right? The 360
Yes.
of the person coming in, so that they are aware of the background and have conversations with this person as well to help them understand and create a structured onboarding program. So they're not really moving from a very structured, templated, formatted life to something which is very ambiguous and open. Creating that structured onboarding program which slowly opens out the roads into the organization and allows them to feel the culture of the organization but still have the safety of a framework within which they have to work will allow them to align very, very easily within the organization. Otherwise, expecting them to just align to what's going on is not really fair. So you
Yeah.
have to work on both sides. You have to work with the veterans coming in and saying this is how it is, and over the next 90 days these are some of the things that you have to do, the people you have to meet, and some you might like, some you might not like, activities that you have to do. But, help you understand what we are all about as an organization and what is it that we stand for as an organization.
Yeah.
Similarly, having those conversations with their 360, whether it's the peers, the managers, or the team, saying this is the background from where this leader is coming in, and hence you need to be a lot more receptive to what it brings. And yes, making sure that there is a non-judgmental safe space for both to come and vent, because there should be that space where they can both come and talk about and say, this is not working. It's either too regimented or not regimented at all. It is
Yes.
too structured or it is too fluid. But there has to be that space where they can come and vent and talk about it so that they can arrive at a situation and a solution that works for both.
Yes, yes. I think creating that ecosystem is super important to ensure both the parties feel respected and not judged
Absolutely.
for bringing in their thoughts to
Absolutely.
the thing. Because,
Absolutely.
more and more such conversations help you refine your processes, help you
Yes.
refine how you
Yes.
integrate people, right?
Yes.
So yeah, in my previous avatar, I have been part of the integration leadership team, so I understand how some of these nuances have to be worked out, and ultimately, I think conversations just open doors.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all the folks who are hearing here, I think go for it. If there are channels, leverage those. And as Kavita pointed out, firm believer, both of us here this side and many more like her, that corporates welcome veterans with open arms, and there are tons of opportunities, and not just the typical ones that we want to maybe bucketize you in. Yeah, so that's what we'd like to maybe move on to Q&A. If there's anything else you'd like to add on, Kavita, we
No,
can.
just wishing, the veterans the very best of luck as they find their new roles and adventures. It's a new adventure, and they shouldn't really look at it being another task that they do, but really as something that's completely different from what they have done all these years in the armed forces. And we're not so bad as civilians. We do give them a nice time.
Oh, we are
So
not
they
at all.
should, I'm sure that they will have a nice time when they come on board. As much as we have enough to learn from them. So it is a give and take, but I think open mind and an intent to integrate is important on both sides, the veterans as well as the corporates.
Yes, yes. Just want to add on to that because it just comes to my mind, learning agility and
Yeah.
speed to execution. I think so important. Many of veterans definitely have it, but yeah, I think continuing with that
Yeah.
spirit, even after transition, just ensures success, and
Oh,
there's
absolutely.
no stopping.
Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. Neha, can we look at the questions now? I'm sure we've got quite a few here.
Sure. Let me just remind everyone here, all the veterans who are there out there who have joined us. Please type your questions if you have any in the chat box. And from that, we have the first question. Number one, it's coming from Lalit. I would like to know that how that corporate evaluate the resume or the CV, because most of us face issues in clearing the first round of resume selection and researching up to the level of interview. Reaching to the interview level is a bigger problem. Kavita, if you may, can answer.
So, I And it's not just for you, Mr. Lalit, it's for everybody. How do you crack the interview and how do we get the resume past that ATS monster so that it gets through an interview stage? It's important that we really deep dive into the job description and understand what is it that the organization is asking for and customize the resume to suit that job description. You cannot have a one size fits all resume. It has to be curated to the job you're applying for, and making connects from your previous avatar into the role that you're applying for helps a great deal. And then over a period of time, you will figure out what are the keywords that really help make those cuts, because of it is a AI generated machine that allows you to shortlist a resume, but making sure that you have customized resume for every role that speak directly to what the JD is asking for helps to a large extent.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, thank you, Kavita. Uh, just to add on to that, I think avoid using military jargons to a great degree. Don't spell out things that maybe a civilian recruiter will not understand. I would rather use full forms of things and try and articulate. If you have been part of, say, a training institution, talk about that as an instructor in this training academy, and this is what you kind of did and what the impact it led to, maybe in terms of dollar value or savings, or whatever that might be. So I think that really helps. Avoid jargons, avoid
No,
army
absolutely.
language.
Absolutely, Rashmi. I think that's a very important point. It's important that you bring the skill that you know, the value that you bring to the table, and the impact that you've driven with that particular skill.
Yes.
If you just stick to that format of, skill, value, and impact throughout the resume, it should be very easy to crack the interview.
Wonderful. I think that should help, Lalit.
Thank you, Kavita, and thank you, Rashmi, for your insights. Now, this one is for you, Rashmi.
Okay.
Uh, there are so many other platforms which are facilitating in veterans in finding second opportunity in corporate. What makes you different from others?
Okay, so that's on Ekam, Kavita. I'll quickly take that up.
Yeah.
All right. So I think what makes us different is, number one, we do this for bread and butter, right? There might be a lot of organizations who do this as a part of their bigger strategy, veteran just being one cohort that they address. We firmly believe in this diverse pool, and that ensures we are focused on bringing this talent, and we provide end-to-end solution. So from tapping onto the talent, bringing them to the transition journey, then handholding them through the placement process. So while our placement services ensure that you are connected to employers, it doesn't just stop there. So you'll have someone who'll be working through you, be working with you throughout the process, be it your resume, be it your interview preparation, be it how all of that kind of comes together. So I think a lot of handholding is something that we at ACOM firmly believe in, and that's what we try and achieve. Yeah.
Thank you, Rashmi, for the quick insight. We have the next question from Nikesh. There are there any exercises that we as veterans can go through to understand how to translate our skills into the corporate? Also, those of us who are not able to get into the PRC program, what other placement opportunities are there outside?
So,
From Akshita. This is from
I'll
Akshita.
try and take the first part, and then Rashmi can answer to the second, because I'm sure that's what Ekam is all about. But for the first part, what really will help is getting onto LinkedIn and reading up as many job descriptions as you think will suit you. As you start reading those job descriptions, you'll realize that there are certain connections to the skills that you bring, and that will help you curate your CV, which is very, very customized. Once you know what is it that corporates are looking for, and it's like, you're answering a question with an open book. So it's like an open book exam. The question is that what does your CV look like? And the book is LinkedIn. So you go through all the job descriptions, try and figure out which is the right answer, and then start curating your CV so that it starts matching some of those job descriptions for the roles that you're looking for. And then you will be able to create that and do the mapping easily. it does require a lot of effort of sitting down and going through it. And at times, I'm sure all of our veterans would have civilian friends. Everyone could just sit down and run it by a couple of them to just get their feedback on saying, does it resonate for a particular role? So, for example, if you're applying, say, for a transformation manager role, and you have not put things around change management, you have not put things around project management in your CV, it's not going to get shortlisted. But if you have put those things around, then clearly anyone looking in that profile will say that yes, you have got the skills that are mapped to for a transformation manager role, and that's a role that you can apply for. So that would be the quickest way of really, doing the mapping of your existing skills and looking at how is it that you can build a resume that really resonates with the corporates looking to place veterans. Rashmi, if you could take the remaining
Yes.
part.
Yes, absolutely. So the second part was if someone's not getting to the pre-RC course. So PRC, Kavita, is pre-release
Yeah.
courses that a lot of veterans go through at different premium institutes. So if one's not able to do that for any reason, I would say still invest time in upskilling yourself, prepare yourself, because I think there cannot be any excuse for not. So I think invest time. There are tons of certifications that you can, go about doing, and then just enroll in those, upskill yourself so that as you apply for the roles, as you kind of revamp your resume, apply for roles, get interviewed, I think you are able to present the best version and are able to crack the interview for that matter. So I think preparation is very important, and courses, what to take, what certifications to do will depend a lot on the skills and your competencies and the areas that you want to work in. So all of these tied together, you could go ahead and do that. I would still recommend upskilling and learning new things as you make the transition, because without that, it's going to be even difficult to find a suitable job for yourself.
And just to add to what Rashmi said, she mentioned learning agility earlier. Don't wait for that last 1 year to start upskilling yourself, right? You would have a sense of when it's going to come up in the next 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. Start preparing yourself mentally. Start looking at courses, doing small interventions, just so that you're able to find your area of interest. Because anything that you didn't know before and you read up on, you know a little more than what you did before you started doing the course. And that's going to help you structure conversations, if not really get in-depth knowledge.
Yes. Thank you, Kavita, for that. Neha, we can have the next one, please.
Yes, we have the next one from Minnie. I am very passionate about project management and HR. I hold qualifications on both. Is it possible to start in PM role and later transition into HR?
The beauty about the corporate space, Mini, is that you can start from anywhere and end anywhere. It really doesn't matter. I started off with FMCG, then moved to media, then moved to BFSI. Now I'm in technology. I've done two entrepreneurial stints in between. So you can move across sectors, across domains, across roles. You just need to have the intent, and you need to make sure that the work that you bring to the table has value and impact. Organizations only look at what is the value and impact you bring to the table. If they are convinced about the value and impact you bring, then movement across roles is very, very easy. You may have to knock a few doors to get those opportunities, but the possibilities are all there for the finding.
Yes, yes. And we make those transitions all the time, Mini. So like as Kavita pointed out, I've moved from research to investment banking to HR to being an entrepreneur today. So I think the world is out there. So I think just go out there, and the word travels. If you're really good in
Yeah,
your job, your boss is an endorser, the subsequent people around you are endorsers. So more and more opportunities open up. So I think our focus should be just getting a great job that you really, really want to do, and then putting all the hard work to really excel at it. And that is, I think, going to take care of what all opportunities will open up in future.
absolutely.
Okay.
We have next question. I hope we have time. Shall I go
Yes,
ahead?
Yeah.
we have about 10-12 minutes. We can go ahead.
Okay. So we have next one from Guru Prasad. To my understanding, corporates look for a right person for the job position. Having said that, for a veteran transitioning after 10 to 14 years of service, compared to a civilian civilians switching jobs after the same experience, corporate might find a civilian a better option due to less overhead in transition. How do we bridge the gap and maintain the edge over competition?
Uh, what would they mean by overhead in transition, Rashmi?
Due to less overhead. So maybe, yeah, I think what he means is as a civilian with the same experience, getting a job, number one, is easier, and there's not a very steep learning curve for that individual
From that
versus a veteran.
perspective. Okay.
Versus a veteran, yeah.
Yeah, but see, it's like this. If you were a civilian and you got into IIM Ahmedabad, right, which is the best B school in the country today, you enter the organization at a certain level. And if you join an MBA school, which is like a tier 5 or tier 6, you enter at a very different level. And both of you are still competing with each other. Each has a different learning curve, each has different opportunities, each has a very different career trajectory. You cannot really compare, but all of this only gets you a foot in the door. Once you enter in, it's a level playing field. Then it's all about your competencies, your skills, and the way you project yourself and what is it that you bring. Again, from, as I said before, the value and the impact you bring to the table. So yes, a civilian might have it easier to get access to more opportunities, but it is just a question of maybe they have access to 10 and you have access to 5. But once you're both in, it is a level playing field. You really don't make a distinction when you do internal advancements, increments, bonuses. At that time, you don't look at background and say, oh, he's a civilian and hence gets more or less versus a veteran might get more or less. So I don't think that should be a concern. But yeah, there is definitely going to be a difference as much as if it was the reverse. If civilians were allowed to enter the armed forces 10, 15 years after they worked in the corporate spaces, they would be at a disadvantage because they would not be able to have done all the things that they had done in the 15 years. So it is a very different entry point, but once you enter, it is a level playing field.
Yeah. And of course, when organizations look to hire veterans, they
Yeah.
come with that mindset, right? So they're not unnecessarily there pegging veterans against their top talent and then saying, this doesn't work. So I think organizations themselves are very conscious and invested in how their ecosystem comes across as a more inclusive and balanced for a veteran. So I think
Yeah.
a lot of organizations, including UST and some bigger names, do that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right. Thank you for the answer. We have another question. We'll take another two questions. I see a lot of veterans have asked this question. This one, that can a person with a project management experience and PMP certification kickstart a career in product management?
They can, but it'll be very tough to get a break there. But yeah, there's nothing stopping them from starting that role. It's just a question of finding the right organization that's willing to take a bet on them. What might be easier is to join a product company as a project
The
manager
project.
and then prove yourself as a project manager for 2 years and then move into a product management role in 18 to 24 months where you have the credibility of the what you bring to the table a lot more embedded within the fabric of the organization.
Got it.
Thank you, Kavita. And we can
There's
take the
this
last.
one,
Yeah.
Neha, I'm just looking at this one. So this has come couple of times, Kavita, so I think we should address this.
Oh.
So how beneficial is a 1 year full-time MBA from a tier one institute like an ISB or IIMs versus the 6 months course, which is part of the exit process for a lot of veterans, especially someone who's transitioning, say, after 20 years? Not the short service folks, but people who are
Yeah.
permanent commission and are leaving forces after 20 years and transitioning. And what could be like the career trajectory for those people?
So if you're coming in after 20 years, you're looking at coming into mid-management. Now, if you're doing a full-time MBA, the benefit of that is that you will get to do an internship. So you will get a sense of what it is. The con of that is that your classmates will definitely be way junior than you are. So you will not have, you might have intellectual stimulation, but you will not be able to have the right kind of dialogue because their aspirations and their thoughts about careers, life, movements across the organization be very different from what you bring to the table. So that's something you must definitely keep in mind when you make that choice between a full-time MBA versus a 6-month PRC that really gets offered. The full-time MBA will give you a lot more time to settle into your particular function or domain that you want to, start your new career into. Access to placement opportunities would be far more because you would have spent a whole year and you would have had an internship opportunity. So you would be able to build a lot more networks. But it's with whom do you really want to study and build as your network? Do you want to build it with your existing fellow armed forces personnel, or do you want to build it with people from the corporate space but who are way junior than you? So, you don't, that's a choice that you will have to make at a very personal level. And this I'm only saying if you're doing it after 20 years. So after 20 years, even if we have to go back to school, we will look at an advanced management program. We would not do a 1-year MBA, which would be like a 6 to 8 week kind of program, because you're then trying to build a network of people who will be able to influence you, would be able to be a sounding board to some of the questions and challenges that you might face at work. And that's the network that you want to build. So doing a full-time MBA requires a lot of time, patience, effort, and dedication, because you're really going to hit the books after 20 years, and those assignments are not easy. So spending time to complete each of those assignments, making sure you go through that, is a huge commitment that you're making. So that's something that has to be really, really well thought out if you're doing it after 20 years. If it is after short service commission, then I wouldn't really think much. It's either this or that. It really won't matter because everything else is a level playing field. But when you're doing it after 20 years, you have to put in a lot of thought on whether it will add value to you as an individual. And it all depends on the individual choices that you intend to make after completion of the program.
Got it. And also, you spoke about the different cohort the individual might be interacting with, depending on the the course that they take. How important do you feel, Kavita, is that network that you study with and work with? We do understand, like when you do that as immediate part of your MBA, and when you're just entering the job market. But at this stage, obviously, there's a difference in the age and the service, and how you perceive things and your experiences. But still, if we can get like a couple of nuggets of insights from you in terms of how this network matters.
Network always matters, right? What you get out of the network is different for different people. Some people network for connections, some people network for making sure that there is a home and a friendly face whenever they travel across the country or the globe, wherever they are. Other people use the networks very, very diligently to, extend their knowledge, to understand what's happening in various sectors and get a deep understanding very, very quickly because it's a friend you're talking to. You're not really logging on to a course or something else. Uh, Movements become a lot easier because you will have openings that are there in each other's organizations. Sounding boards, right, where you really want to create like a board of directors for yourself, where that's a group of people you trust who will tell you the truth no matter what. And when you've spent time struggling over an assignment that is due the next day, then you start to build that trust over a period of time, and that becomes a group that's really seen you at your best and your worst. So that becomes again that same non-judgmental safe space, and there are people who will be willing to tell you things how they are and be willing to call a spade a spade. So networks in that sense are extremely important. That said, it doesn't mean that you can't create these networks outside of the educational frameworks that are there. You can create it when you join a corporate, you can do it within the corporate, you can do it in a lot of meetups that get created, find out similar minded people everywhere. And there are a lot of these organizations that have connections and networks that get created. But being part of some of these networks will just ease the stress of really trying to traverse this journey on your own. It just gives you that backing that there are other people also in the same boat, facing the same challenges, having the same issues, and you're not the only one struggling. And if you see someone else struggling and you're the one who has managed to conquer it, then it allows you to also share and say, hey, it's not that difficult. I've done it. So this is what you could do as well. So there's a nice give and take that allows you to be comforted and the hero at the same time.
Yes, I think this links to the culture most of the veterans come from,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that we're not social or things like that, but just that it's a different setup and different culture, and that is what people have to kind of get their way around and they have to, I think, just more fluid in their approach. I think unless you ask, you'll never know what the answer was.
I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You'll get a no.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And for that also you have to ask. So
Yeah.
unless you ask, you never know.
Yep.
All right. I'm just looking at the time and I'm just looking in terms of if there's any new question that has come in. Neha?
I no, there are no other questions. No new questions.
Oh, there's this one last one, Kavita. An interesting one though. How easy or difficult is it to switch your domain if you later realize that you weren't meant for it?
It's up to you. If it's easy if you decide it is, it's tough if you decide it is. Uh, Changing domain is not something that is frowned upon,
Hmm.
but there is a lot of hard work that the individual would have to put in when they are switching domains, because it does mean a paradigm shift. In certain cases, it might mean a change in a completely in the way you work, in the way you look at things, your mindset, all of that. And in that sense, the veterans are doing a domain shift from a work
Yeah.
culture and a workspace perspective. But yeah, it's not something that's uncommon. A lot of people do it. A lot of people move from passion to domain very, very quickly, saying, "Oh, I'm doing X, but my passion is about B, so I'm going to change my domain and start doing B now." It is
Hmm.
there, but yes, the entire onus of being successful or not, or enjoying the new domain or not, lies on the individual.
Yes. And that's why I think the initial process, what we spoke about, translating the skills, really reflecting upon it and making the right choice is so important. And then obviously as you go about it, there would be more things that you would love to do in your career. So changing that is not going to be a problem.
And somewhere, you have to also be open to what other people tell you.
Hmm.
In the corporate space, a lot of time opportunities come by because other people see the potential of you doing a certain role that you might not see in yourself. So giving opportunities and saying yes, if something very, very different to what you think you can do comes your way, also helps, because then it's their onus to make you successful because they've suggested it to you.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, taking on those risks once in a way always helps.
Yeah, I think bigger gains with bigger risk. Yeah, obviously after you have kind of settled in and know
Once
the
you're in your
drill.
own space, once you know, end of the day, you know what's good for you and you know what's going to work and whether it's the right decision or wrong decision. It's like I always tell the students when I meet lectures and they say, no, we don't know which elective to take. There are so many. I'm
Yeah,
like, look, take two electives and toss a coin in the air. Right? When you say heads elective A, tails elective B. As the coin is coming down in your mind, you're going to say really hard, please let it be elective A. And then you know that's the one you really want.
really want it.
You want that to be the winning side of the coin to turn up. I said, so just do that with life as well. It's okay. It's not that tough. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Absolutely. I think we take ourselves a lot more seriously than we are supposed to be. And
Yes, absolutely.
that
I don't
creates a
think
lot of
God
noise.
or anyone intended us to be so serious about our lives.
Absolutely. All right. I think we are on time. Neha, over to you if there's anything else we might want to address before we wrap up.
I think we have covered most of the. I mean, I think all the questions that they're in the chat box. So we should call it off then. Anything that you want to add, Rashmi, at the end?
I think I just want to thank Kavita for making time for the conversation today. I think it's been so wonderful having you here and hearing you. And I'm sure everyone who made time to be part of the discussion today feels the same. And if there's anything else you'd like to add, please do that.
Sure.
It,
Thank
I
you
would
so
like
much.
to thank again. I would like to thank Kavita again for taking out her precious time and answering all the questions and sharing the insights. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kavita, and thank you everyone who has joined us. So a special thanks again to Rashmi and Kavita for their
So
insights.
before we
And
wrap up, Neha, I know she has one more agenda, Kavita, that's why she's rushing. So let me stop you there, Neha. Before we run into the NPS question, Kavita, you'd like to share anything before we
No,
move
no, I
on?
just wanted to thank you all for giving me the opportunity and happy to have been here. And if I'm able to have answered a few questions for some of the veterans, and yeah, happy to have done that.
Thank you so much. And once again, I think from the entire team at ACAM, we enjoyed this conversation, putting this up for you and with you and your team. It's been wonderful. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
thank you.
Over to you, Neha.
All right, so please fill out the feedback form on the screen to help us improve. We appreciate your participation and we look forward to seeing you in future events.
Thank you. Thank you to all the veterans, HR professionals, folks who joined in today. We really appreciate it. And do share the feedback and do share what more you'd like to know about. And we'd love to curate those experiences for you. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Have a great day ahead.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Kavita.